Good evening, everyone. This is the special meeting of the Town Council to go over the fiscal year 2021 budget. This meeting is being recorded by Watertown Cable Access, and it's being broadcast also on Zoom, and there is dial-in information that's available on the town's website. Before we begin, I'd like to get a roll call, please. Thought I saw Marilyn there. Maybe not. Councilor Picciarelli, could you call the roll for us, please?
Councilor Bays,
Present.
Councilor Donato,
Present.
Councilor Gannon. Councilor Gannon, no. Councilor Palumba,
Present.
Councilor Cornelis,
Present.
Councilor Feltner,
Present.
Councilor Woodland,
Present.
President Sideris.
Present. Councilor Picciarelli.
Present.
Councilor Gannon is arriving here. Okay. I now am going to make a statement that I make every year. Tonight's hearing, as well as tomorrow night's, are being held in compliance with the provisions of Article 5, the Home Rule Charter of the city known as the Town of Watertown. It should be noted for the record that the proposed budget has been published as required by Section 5-2 of the Charter, and that the hearings referenced above were included in the publication of the budget, again in compliance and conformity with the provisions of Section 5-2. The Town Council will hold public meetings in accordance with the Governor's order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, related to the 2020 COVID-19 emergency, and to avoid group congregations. These meetings have only remote opportunities for participation with public access. These hearings are being held by the Town Council sitting as the Committee of the Whole, and the following ground rules will be in operation during each of the hearings on the substantive portions of the budget. The Town Manager will give an overview of his budget at tonight's hearing. At tomorrow night's public hearing, the Town Manager and all the department heads will be available to answer questions related to town departments and other sections of the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. The council may ask questions or make comments at any time during the hearing and shall seek recognition from the chair for that purpose. The chair may recognize individuals at each of the hearings when it is deemed appropriate or necessary to the committee's consideration of the budget. Following tomorrow night's public hearing, it is the intention of the chair to ask the Committee of the Whole to refer the budget to the council, which will meet in formal session on Monday, June 29th at a special meeting at 6 o'clock. At the meeting on June 29th, it is the intention of the chair, in considering the budget, to give the members an opportunity to pass over any item they wish to have clarified, discussed, or debated. All sections and/or items not passed in accordance with long-standing legislative practice will be considered as having been adopted, following which the council will consider each of the passed items individually and act upon them until the entire budget has been acted upon. The chair would also like to remind the members and the public generally that under the provisions of the charter, this council is limited in the actions it take with regard to the budget in its entirety or any section or line item it contains. The council may adopt, reject, or reduce the recommended amounts. It lacks authority to increase any appropriation above the amount contained in the manager's submission or to add to the budget except as provided in the charter amendment, which expanded the council's budget authority consistent with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 32 and 33. As a result, pursuant to General Laws, Section 32, the council may now, on the recommendation of the school committee, and by a 2/3 vote, increase the total amount appropriated for the support of the schools, provided that any such increase does not render the annual budget in excess of the limit of Proposition 2.5. Additionally, if the town council deems an appropriation for some purpose not included in the town manager's recommended budget is necessary, and the town manager fails to recommend such an appropriation after having been requested by the town council to do so, the council may, on its own initiative, after 7 days' notice, make such an appropriation by a vote of at least 2/3 of its members. This procedure is limited to an appropriation for a purpose that was not recommended by the town manager and cannot be used to increase the amount of the appropriation for any purpose which was included in the town manager's recommended budget. Finally, it should be noted that the budget, as submitted, is in accord with Proposition 2.5, and insofar as it can be practicably determined, all other local and state rules, regulatory and statutory mandates and requirements. What this essentially means is that the bottom line cannot be increased. Therefore, if the members wish to urge the town manager to increase any section or line item, you must be prepared to suggest what section or sections or line item or line items you wish to have reduced or eliminated to fund the increase. At this point, Mr. Manager, we'll proceed with the overview, with your overview of the fiscal year 2021 budget. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. As the president just indicated, tonight's the fiscal year 2021 budget overview. As you recall, back on April 14th, the Honorable Town Council had made a decision to put off the required submission of the budget due to the uncertainty of revenues for the upcoming fiscal year, particularly local aid. So 2 weeks ago, last night, the fiscal year 2021 budget was submitted, which covers the period of time July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. Tonight, we're very pleased to present the fiscal year 2021 budget. It is the 28th budget that I've submitted to the town council as town manager. All of this information that you'll see in the next 30 plus pages is on the town's website, www.watertown-ma.gov. On page 2 of the overview shows you 4 parts of the tonight's overview, beginning with a budget update, a budget overview, and then the revenue expenditure forecast, budgets, and then the forecast itself. So on page 3, this is a chart that shows you what town council did back on June 4th of 2019. The left-hand column, which adopted a budget of $147,758. Back on November 12th of 2019, the town council voted an amendment to the fiscal year 20 budget, increasing the amount of the budget by $2,153,809. Just very briefly, that was due in large part to the $1,419,000 of additional new growth that we'll see better on page 11, a little additional monies from local aid. And then the other financing sources was a collective bargaining stabilization fund, moving monies from that fund into the town council reserve to replenish monies that were related to agreements with the 2 police union agreements, police association and police supervisors for fiscal years 2017 through 2019. The
Manager, 1 minute. We have a hand up. Councilor Feltner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clarify if our auditor, Tom Tracy, is attending tonight.
Would you?
Yes, that's correct. Tom Tracy is here in the room.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's on the $621,500 was amount of monies the council voted from collective bargaining stabilization fund into replenish the town council reserve for police agreements from fiscal year 17 to 19. Ironically enough, town council will be considering on July 14th a transfer from town council reserve to the collective bargaining stabilization fund for agreements that we don't have for fiscal year 20, which I'll speak to in the moving forward on the July 14th council meeting. On the expenditure side, just very quickly, the $1,454,529. Those are a variety of transfers to town departments, and note of particular are the two public safety groups, which total $1,227,000 related to collective bargaining and stabilization funds. And then clearly just down in debt and interest and capital projects, the variance there was the town council funded various projects for schools, for a second set of protective gear for the fire department, and 2 vehicles in the public buildings, as well as providing, so those pluses and minuses. The other financing uses, the $506,364 is related to town council appropriating $500,000 to our capital project stabilization fund. Again, something we'll be looking to do on July 14th. So that's page 3 in a nutshell. Page 4 is the just reproduced page 7 of the fiscal year 2021 budget message. The 5 highlights, if you will, are, and particularly when you see the Boston Globe today about how many layoffs are happening in our school systems across the Commonwealth. First, in the layoffs, funding of the 3 elementary school project, fully funding retirement system as of July 1, 2020, funding plan to address the unfunded OPED liability, and then lastly, initial funding of informational technology assessment recommendations. The funding of the 3 elementary schools plus the retirement and the pension, you'll see a new chart we'll put in on page 31, which will show the highlights, the dollar amounts that we're doing for those 3 items. Page 5 shows you, which is page 8 from the fiscal year 2021 budget message, shows you 15 continued program initiatives. I'll speak to the first 4 of them, which are continued very strong commitment to education, the enhanced funding of the pension and the OPED liability, community policing, including 52 police officers, and fire department sworn personnel levels at 87. On page 6 is a reproduce of page 3 of the fiscal year 2021 budget message. These 7 issues, in the collective bargaining, right now we have agreements for fiscal year 2021 and 22 with the Firefighters Association, DPW, and library. We don't have agreements in place right now with Town Hall Associates, the Police Association, and the police supervisors. As I mentioned on page 3, we'll be coming back to Town Council to move monies to address those outstanding collective bargaining agreements. The uncertainty of future local aid, we'll certainly speak to that on page 12. The capital improvement program, the $524.150 million, certainly it's a critical issue. Page 7 shows you, in essence, where the monies are coming from and where the monies are going to be appropriated. You show the current fiscal year 2020 budget. The increase in revenues and expenditures is a 1.69% increase, or $2,530,191. We're going to walk over in greater details at the beginning this on the revenue side, the 4 revenues, so I won't go over each one of those. On the expenditure side, I call your attention to, when we're developing this budget, that if you look at the departmental expenditures increases for education and town departments, that totals almost $2.3 million. The pension going up $1.4 million, and the insurance going up $919,000. That's a almost $4.6 million increase. The reductions occurred in the council reserve, the capital projects, and the snow, state, and waste totaled about $385,000. So then that's again where the monies came from and where they were going to. On page 8 of the overview, interesting enough, this is the first year that I can remember, and I've spoken to the town council many times during the preliminary budget overview in October, that the numbers in October were preliminary in nature, and to get a balanced budget, the revenues will go up, the revenues will go down, or the expenditures will go up, or the expenditures will go down. Well, this is the first year, Mr. President, members of the council, that both the revenues and the expenditures went down. Last year, the revenues went up, and to the tune of $1.5 million, and the expenditures went up another $600,000. So you'll see that the revenues back in October Our estimate went down almost $3.9 million, due in large part to COVID-19. And then the expenditures to have a balanced budget had to be reduced by another $3.3 million. Page 9 shows, which is page 25 of the budget message, just shows you fiscal year 2009, ending budget there through fiscal year 2021, which we're talking about tonight. That's 12 fiscal years. The budget, the town council has appropriated over this 12 fiscal years, $56.748 million, which is represents about a 4.94% increase of each one of the 12 fiscal years. Again, the dollar amounts are listed there. Of note, you'll see that the education and town departments, and adding the pension obligation and the debt and interest, when you add all of those 4 items up, that totals almost $51.2 million, which represents 90.2% of the monies the town council's appropriated or will be appropriated with the fiscal year 21 budget over 12 fiscal years. Page 10 is the pie chart showing you the 4 revenue categories. Clearly, the real estate and personal property taxes, which I mentioned 2 weeks ago last night, is going up to 80.17% of our budget, which is an increase over last year's April submission of another 2.55% increase. So last year was 77.62, and now it's up to 80.17. So our largest, on page 11, our largest revenue source for the fiscal year 2021 budget is our real estate and personal property taxes. This represents, as I just mentioned, 80.17% of the budget. Just want to call your attention to the first item on the first column, the $4.9 million. That was what I referred to back on page 3 when town council appropriated. We came in with new growth totaling $4,919,268, which was the estimate was $3.5 million. Just quickly showing the adjusted levy limit is the $117 million. That becomes your starting point for fiscal year 2021. You multiply by 2.5%. By law, you're allowed to have the taxes go up $2.9 million. The next item is the new growth to $3.1 million. That in October, if you looked at your preliminary budget overview, that would have you would have seen $3.6 million. So we've reduced the new growth for fiscal year 2021 by $500,000. It's due in large part to a slowdown, COVID-19 related items. Thus, the $3.1 million back in October was $3.6 million. The new growth, which I'll speak to when we discuss all the revenue forecasts, predominantly for fiscal years 2021 and 2022, will be related to the Arsenal Yards development. So when you take the $117 million starting point, add the $2.9 million, add the 3.1, you have the adjusted levy limit, subtracting the overlay, you have a new, if you will, revenue dollar amount for the real estate and personal property taxes of $122.2 million, which is an increase of $6.1 million for fiscal year 21. Page 12 is the second category, which is local aid. As we've discussed at great length on 2 weeks ago tonight, was we've got the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021 is a 20% reduction over the current appropriation. So we've got a current appropriation for fiscal year 20 is $13,205,000. We've reduced that by 20% down to $10,565,000, or an increase of $2,640,612. I mean, those dollar amounts, or when developing an estimate of what we've been looking at, we will certainly be as watching as we move through as the Commonwealth and the governor and the legislative body moves through their budget process itself. Just by way of background, the state aid is 6.93% of the budget. Last year, it was 8.86%, so a drop of 1.93% of our overall budget. Page 13 is the local receipts, which is the third category of the revenue dollar amounts. Again, in fiscal year 21, it represents 7.9%. Last year it was the current budget was 9.07, so another reduction of 1.17%. Just want to kind of clearly walk you through the $1,364,049 reduction. take the first three items that are listed, which are motor vehicle excise, meals excise, and hotel excise. Those are all COVID-19 related items. When you add the variance column, all three of those dollar amounts total to $747,500. In fiscal year 2021, we're estimating a 10% reduction in motor vehicle, in hotel and motel, and the meals tax a 25% reduction. The $250,000 reduction in fees, you'll see greater on page 14. The other item that I wanted to call your attention to is the pilot, the $1,024,699. That is, we've got 6 entities to pay a pilot to the town, but in essence, the Tufts Health Plan represents, they have a payment plan scheduled for fiscal year 2021 of $938,691, which represents 91.6% of that appropriation. Now, as you all have read recently, that Tufts and Harvard Pilgrim are going to be joining forces, if you will, in moving to Canton. There is an agreement with the property in East Watertown. Thus, although we have that in fiscal year 2021 will happen, we're not sure moving forward with fiscal year 2022 and beyond. The pilot would go down and the real estate and personal property taxes, because it would be a taxable entity, would be moving forward with that. The fines and forfeits, I'll discuss in greater detail on page 16, the reduction of $95,000. And then lastly, the Medicare reimbursement of $320,000 in fiscal year 20. We're estimating at this point there'll be no monies coming in for Medicaid reimbursement. We received our correspondence from Ms. Perkins from the school department indicating with the change in the laws regarding what's eligible for reimbursements, her recommendation that we don't plan on any monies in fiscal year 2021. On page 14, as I mentioned before, this gives you the outline of the 21 groups, the fiscal year 20 categories, if you will. Fiscal year 20 budget is $4.1 million. Fiscal year 21 is $3,850,000, a reduction of $250,000. That's related to ambulance fees. As indicated, we had provided, assuming that we would be able to run 2 ambulances 100% of the time. That didn't work out, and thus the reduction on the revenue side and the reduction in the overtime for the police departments, for the fire department's appropriation of overtime. So again, fees in fiscal year 21 is $3,850,000. Page 15 shows you the 5 categories for license and permits. The fiscal year 21 appropriation estimated revenue is the same as fiscal year 20, $192,000. Page 16, you'll see what I mentioned before, the fines and forfeits are going down by $95,000. The first item I'm going to call attention to is the library. The $45,000 in fiscal year 20 is being reduced to 0 as a follow-up to a request of the library director and the library trustees that as of July 1, there'll be a move to eliminate any late fees for past and future borrowing of materials. Discussion with the library director, Ms. Cole, had indicated that there is mounting evidence that late fees pose a barrier to utilizing the library's resources for some of the community and is not a deterrent. There's also evidence that once a library does go without late fees, or fine-free materials have been kept overdue or returned in the libraries, and the library usage would increase. But certainly the other thing to consider is the library will enforce a policy that would block cards with items overdue for extended period of time. So that would be $45,000. The other $50,000 is coming from the police fines, which again is related to what we've done in fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. As I mentioned before, this was bearing some watching. This is a little more of the police department's approach of being a guardian versus a warrior. Thus, we're reducing the recommended appropriation in fiscal year 21 by $50,000. Page 17 is the 4th category, which other finance and sources. Fiscal year 2021 is 5% of the fiscal year budget is the other finance and sources. That's going up 0.55 from the fiscal year 20 budget. Just call your attention to a couple items. The transfer from the pocket meter fund would drop by $100,000, given that there was, since the middle of March, there was very, very little activity with parking meters and continued. I mentioned about the transfer of the collective bargaining stabilization fund. And then lastly, the last item there, the utilization of free cash of $2 million. The recommended appropriation for fiscal year 2021 is $3,250,000. This is certainly due in large part to offset the $2.6 million reduction in local aid and almost a $1.4 million in the local receipts. So the other financing sources is going up by $430,324. So page 18 shows you the summary of the first part of the presentation tonight. Again, showing the increase in revenue of $2.5 million. The real estate and personal property taxes going up 6.1. Local aid, state aid going down 2.6. The local receipts almost going down $1.4 million. And then I just talked about the other financing sources. So the revenue, the $2.5 million, Mr. President, members of the council, is a 1.69% increase. Just by way of background, when we had this overview back in May a year ago, last year the budget went up $5.5 million and the increase was 3.89%. So moving right along to page 19, and this is kind of, I've called this for years, kind of the eye chart special. We'll briefly touch upon a couple of things. When you look at the school appropriation of the 34.07, what's not included in that, and this is it falls in line with other departments as well, is it doesn't include retirement, health insurance, the debt and interest on any of the school capital projects. And so I've mentioned that in the past. I do want to call your attention to a couple of items that the health insurance, which is 11.15%, and the pension OPED is another 11.13. So when you see those two categories, that's almost $34 million, which represents 22.28% of the budget. And then the other item that I wanted to mention briefly is our debt and interest, which is up to 11.35%. What town council has always looked to do is to have the appropriation be 7.5% to 8% of the budget. But now that we're spending money on our elementary school project, it's moving up. But when you take out the school projects, anticipated spending of $6.2 million in fiscal year 2021, it brings down that percentage to 7.28%, and that's a little shy of the 7.5% to 8%, but it's certainly related to COVID. The other item that I wanted to talk to was the public safety budgets of 14.2% of the budget, and I've actually given the eye chart special. And then clearly a lot of discussion in the last several weeks regarding spending or appropriation levels for our public safety departments. I felt it would be appropriate to, if you will, provide another chart and talk about the fiscal year 2021 expenditures under public safety, and to kind of, if you will, take a few minutes to review and outline how both the fire and police are deployed in providing service to our citizens of Watertown. Just by way of background, the public safety study, which was in the budget message, was one of the top priorities of the Honorable Town Council's fiscal year 2012 budget policy guidelines, was related to public safety, and that police, fire, and dispatch together represent the town's biggest expenditure after education and examination of how to deliver the level of services citizens want more efficiently and should be undertaken. To that end, an RFP was issued. The objective of the public safety study was to perform an assessment of the fire department and the police department, including dispatch operation, and identify opportunities for improvements in efficiency and cost effectiveness of operation to meet the service needs for Watertown. The public safety study was completed in accordance with the budget policy guidelines. The town council proceeded with a review of the public safety study recommendations to determine how best to deliver the level of services the citizens want more efficiently. So what I'd like to talk about on page, and this is put this on the town's website tonight, is page 19A, if you will, which is the expenditures for public safety. And I kind of walk through like to start with the fire department appropriation. Just keep in mind that the fiscal year 2021 budget before town council is $152,442,000. The fire department budget that we're going to be discussing tonight and tomorrow night is recommended appropriation is $11,285,841, is $26,083 above the current appropriation, and it represents 7.4% of the fiscal year 2021 budget. In April of this year, an agreement was reached with the Firefighters Association on a 3-year contract covering July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2022. The mission of the Watertown Fire Department is to provide the citizens and the visitors of Watertown with an effective, well-trained team of professionals to protect their lives and property through fire prevention and education, emergency service consisting of fire suppression, emergency medical services, rescue and hazardous material response, and emergency management and training. The fire department is staffed by 89 total employees. The administrative staff consists of 5 uniformed personnel, which is 1 fire chief, 1 assistant fire chief, 1 captain, 2 lieutenants, and 2 civilian clerks. The suppression staff divides 82 uniformed personnel into 4 work groups with a minimum of 17 and a maximum of 21 per group of fire officers and firefighters per shift. Since July 1 of 2015, the fire department has hired 22 new firefighters, which accounts for 25% of our department. You'll see the same thing on the police departments, where we've got a significant changeover in both our police and fire and police departments. The fire department provides its services from the 3 fire stations, obviously on Main Street, up on the East Fire Station, on Mount Auburn Street, and then certainly the Station 3 at 270 Orchard Street. Each shift, the department staffs 3 engines, 2 ladder trucks, one deputy chief command vehicle, and 1 ALS ambulance. If the staffing level is 19 or above, the department staffs an additional ambulance at the basic life support. During 2019, the Watertown Fire Department responded to 6,170 calls to service, which is approximately 55% of them were medical calls. The department has administered 128 doses of Narcan since 2014, when they started the program. Now, talking to the police department budget, again, the police department budget for fiscal year 2021, submitted budget on June 8th is $10,308,183, and it's $69,482 above the current appropriation, and it represents 6.76% of the fiscal year 2021 budget. As indicated in the budget message, monies for proposed agreements with both police groups for fiscal year 20 to 22 have been placed in the fiscal year 21 police department budget. The dollar amount was $465,000. I indicated 2 weeks ago tonight that if we'd reached an agreement, if we didn't reach an agreement, we'd be coming back to town council, amending that monies and moving those monies to town council reserve till we reach an agreement. Clearly, that we will need to be doing that on Monday night, June 29. So I'd like to speak a little more about the police department. The mission statement and the values of the police department reads as follows. The Watertown Police Department is dedicated to serving the community by protecting life and property, by preventing crime, by enforcing the law, and by maintaining order for all citizens in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The Watertown Police Department is committed to training and professionalism. With the support of our citizens, we strive to work in unity with our community to anticipate, prevent, and help solve problems. With compassion and respect, we strive to maintain a partnership of trust with our community by upholding the highest moral and ethical standards. With community policing and community service as our foundation, we dedicate ourselves to ensuring the highest quality of life in our community, both now and for future generations. So, Mr. President, members of the council, the fiscal year 2021 budget includes funding of 70 uniformed police officers, including 52 patrol officers, 9 dispatchers, and 4 civilian employees, for a total of 83 employees, along with crossing guards for various locations throughout the town. As I mentioned about the hiring of the fire department's staff over 25%, the same thing is happening in Watertown, that the Watertown Police Department has hired 20 police officers in the past four years, which represents 28.5% of the department. Police department is responsible for supervising, training, and coordinating the 9 public safety dispatches. We've got 43 officers and supervisors assigned to the patrol division. These officers supply coverage 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. 27 police uniform personnel are assigned to administrative services, detective, community staff, development, and traffic. The patrol division, on average, has 4 patrol officers and a supervisor working on the street at all times. 4 patrol officers and a supervisor on the street for the various shifts throughout protecting our community. Patrol functions include general patrol, responding to calls for service, traffic enforcement, community policing, and other administrative tasks. And the patrol division in 2019 responded to 26,667 calls for service. I mentioned about the fire department response to Narcan. The Watertown Police Department started in 2016, and since then has saved 55 individuals with the use of Narcan. The next item I wanted to talk about is advocates program within the police department. A full-time mental health clinician has been assigned to the police department since 2011. Watertown was the 2nd department in the state to have this program. This clinician has 304 mental health diversions in 2018, and in 2019 had another 331 mental health diversions. The police department, as I indicated 2 weeks ago tonight, and in the budget message, remains committing to expanding the community policing philosophy through the department, with focusing on creating more partnerships with the community, providing training to the police department on the 6 pillars of the Presidential Task Force on 21st century policing, maintaining and enhancing the trust of the Watertown police officers by members and groups of our community. And additionally, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago tonight, in fiscal year 21, the police department will join in partnership with the Communities for Restorative Justice program. Just briefly on the community policing, talked about this before, the Citizen Police Academy, the bicycle patrols, and the Cops and Recreation program. And then certainly a couple of questions were raised regarding the detective division. Certainly one thing I would say is they're responsible for criminal investigations, follow-up, and also oversee the prosecution, prosecutors and evidence. And we do have 2 detectives assigned to 2 drug task force, which conduct high-level and street-level drug enforcement. And that clearly is when I mentioned about the Narcan utilization. And then lastly, on the community and staff division, the one thing that that division does is oversee accreditation of our police department, one of the 94 police departments in the state to reach full accreditation. So those, Mr. President, members of the council, kind of provide you with an overview of our fire department and our police department, which represents, again, the 14.2% of our budget. The other 0.04 is emergency management, which is another $55,000 of the $152 million budget. Moving on to page 20, Mr. President, members of the council, shows you the expenditures of fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21, the $2.5 million. Interesting enough, I'll call your attention to a couple of items. When you look at the OPED and the debt retirement, the OPED is going down by $5.6 million. And the pension, the debt retirement is going up 5.7. So that overall increase providing some more debt and interest to our capital projects is somewhat muted by the, or offset by the reduction of OPED. The other item I call your attention to is snow and ice removal. As you recall, the council had appropriated back in June of last year, $1.5 million. You look at the budget today, and it's 1.415. As you recall, Mr. Tracy had written correspondence requesting $85,000 for COVID-19 expenditures. Thus, we're moving the dollar amounts back to the appropriation. So that's page 20. Page 21 is the last section of the overview. The various categories, we're moving forward on there. We'll go to page 22. And the first column I want to talk about is new growth. I talked about on page 11 that our projected new growth for fiscal year 21 was $3.1 million. Back in October was 3.6. So what I'd like to do, we're looking at that column just for the council and the folks at home. When you look at new growth for fiscal year 21, I'm going to read the numbers, what they were in October. So in fiscal year 21, we were estimated $3.6 million. Fiscal year 22 was $3.8 million. And then $3 million in fiscal year 2023 and 2024. So you see a shift here. We reduced the first two fiscal years, 21 and 22, by $500,000, and increasing like type dollar amounts, $500,000 in fiscal year 23 and 24. As I mentioned, in fiscal year 2021, that's really related to the COVID-19 slowdown. But in fiscal year 2021 and 2022, the majority of those monies for new growth are related to the arsenal yards. The dollar amount between the 116 million current budget to the 122 proposed budget is the 6,104,000, which you saw on page 11, which is 80.17% of the budget. Page 23 is state aid, the second category. Again, right now we're forecasting a 20% reduction. We certainly hope that that would change. This represents 6.93% of the budget, but as we've done historically, whatever the estimate is for the budget we're talking about, we keep the same dollar amounts for fiscal year, the three afterwards. So fiscal year 2022 through 2024 remain at the $10,565,000. Page 24 is local receipts. This is kind of a busy sheet as well. Kind of walk through some of the items that talking about here. As we mentioned before, motor vehicle, meals, and hotel going down $747,500. But just quickly on the motor vehicle excise, you'll see we're increasing each one of the years for the forecast $125,000 each year. So being very conservative that by fiscal year 24, we're back to the same revenue amount we had for fiscal year 20. Same thing with the meals tax. We're increasing those dollar amounts up each one of those years to moving, and you'll see that moving the increases coming up when we started with the 25% reduction, and then adding systematically moving those up. And the same thing with the hotel. We're moving forward, adding $150,000 each year to that. Again, we're at this point, there's no, if you will, game planning or a book on how to deal with the COVID-19 with respect to revenues. The dollar amounts you'll see moving forward, the decrease from fiscal year 20 to 21 is almost $1,364,000. But then when you look at 22, 23, and 24, it's roughly an increase of about $442,000 off of the lower base dollar amount from there. Page 25 shows you the other financing sources. Again, the greater utilization of free cash in fiscal year 2021, dropping it back down in fiscal years 22 and throughout. We do have capital project stabilization funds up through fiscal year 2024. We'll be looking for other opportunities to move forward with providing, given the fact that we've got over $524,000 for a capital improvement program. Moving to page 26, shows you, this is a chart that Mr. Tracy developed years ago, showing us the utilization of free cash and overlay surplus. This shows you the 6 fiscal years. We're relying on more in fiscal year 2021. Just want to call your attention to the SPED stabilization fund, which we didn't fund or put in additional appropriations for fiscal year 19 through 21. I would respectfully suggest the town council appropriated monies back in fiscal year 2014, $750,000. The schools provided another $200,000 in fiscal year 2018. The current balance in that appropriation is $1,014,307. So clearly, we're very much a building for concerns with special ed, but we're not appropriating any monies in fiscal year 21, nor did we do it in 19 or 20. Page 27 gives you the forecast summary. Again, the first 2 columns total the increase is $2.5 million of the 1.69% increase. Ironically enough, going from 21 to 22, the increase is 3.77%, 4.48 and 4.52 respectively. So clearly this is an abnormality regarding fiscal year 21 related to COVID-19. Page 28 shows you we're looking at the expenditure assumptions. The departmental expenditures for fiscal year 20 to 24 are anticipated to go up 2.5%. The education appropriation is anticipated to go up 3%. The snow and ice is at $1.5 million. Waste disposal, we're looking at a 5% increase. The state assessments, we're assuming a 2.5%, except MBTA will be 2.75. Insurance employee benefits is a 7.5% increase. The pension costs, the other portion, OPED in 3 elementary schools, I'm going to speak to that on page 31. Page 29 shows you the expenditure forecast moving forward. When you look at these are all the departmental expenditures. You look at the first 2 columns, the increase for all the departmental expenditures are going up 2.555,591. A year ago when we made the overview presentation was over $4 million. So in the education appropriation going up a little shy of $1.5 million represents 58.5% of the increase in the departmental dollar amounts. Page 30, the state assessments going up, just very quickly going up a little shy of 99,154. Just by way of background, as you know, as mentioned in the that $2.8 million, what represents 86% of that is the MBTA assessment of over $2.4 million. Just quickly looking at the pension and the OPED, which you'll see greater on when we get to page 31. The same thing with the debt. I want to quickly speak about the debt. When you look at the permanent debt column, it's going down. You're going $6 million in fiscal year 20, and then you're going, when you get to 2024, currently today, taking a snapshot, it's cut in half. Now, that'll change when you look at the bottom line, when you go from 9.7 million up to almost 15.5, and then you go all the way up to fiscal year 2024, almost $30 million. That's related to the 3 elementary schools project. So on page 31, this is our new chart that we've created this year. And quite frankly, it's page 47 of the preliminary budget overview that we did on October 8 of 2019. So what we're doing right now, Mr. President, members of the council, these 3 appropriations, the pension, the OPED, and the 3 elementary schools, we're right now forecasting spending $23,440,572. So in fiscal year 21, that represents 15.38% of the budget. But what we did in the administration working with council is providing the flexibility to have our 3 elementary schools built within the confines of 2.5. That's the driving dollar amount. So whatever the dollar amount, when you look at these columns moving forward, like for 21 and 22, the debt and interest on their elementary schools are going up $2.28 million. Well, what's going down is the pension and OPED. So what would happen is any monies that are needed for the 3 elementary school project to move forward with, we'll deal with that. Then we would deal with the pension appropriation, which you'll see is significantly, I'm going to walk through in a minute, and then the OPEB, which we're looking to hope to pay off within 10 years. Just as by way of background, the 3 elementary schools, the dollar amounts on fiscal year 2024, that 15.4 million for the 3 elementary schools, that's the high water mark. So that's the highest dollar amount we'll have of borrowing $170 million and paying for those 3 elementary schools, 2 new and 1 renovated and new, all within the confines of Proposition 2.5. So just very quickly looking at the pension, the appropriation in fiscal year 21 is the $14,588,179. That's going up $1.4 million. It drops down to 13.6 million, almost $13.6 million. And then the dollar amounts there. I would caution you, as mentioned in the budget message, that certainly in 2019, the retirement board had a significant, a wonderful return on investments, which would be helpful when we're doing the new funding schedule. That being said, obviously we know what's happened with COVID-19 in the markets. The other post-employment benefits, you see the dollar amounts that are listed there. And then with the pension and with the middle elementary school dollar amount is you will see going from a significant increase from fiscal year 20 to 21, going from a little shy of $1 million up to almost $6.5 million, growing to 8.7, 12.8, and then the 15.63 million, but all within the confines of Proposition 2.5. Page 32. Very quickly shows you the insurance employee benefits growing. And we've been very lucky to have us belonging to the Group Insurance Commission to take advantage of their proven track record of providing efficient and health insurance for our employees and retirees. Just want to, on this page, I want to kind of do a shout out to Town Council on the street and sidewalk improvements. When you look at the $1,061,600 going up 5% into $1,114,600. As indicated on page 52 of the budget message, beginning in fiscal year 1999 through fiscal year 2021, that's 23 fiscal years, the Town Council has or will be appropriating on Monday evening $16,269,844, which represents over $707,000 each one of those fiscal years, all within the confines of Proposition 2.5. Page 33 shows you again the dollar amounts that are related to quickly the other financing sources. The Town Council Reserve currently at $2.7 million for fiscal year 21, drops down to $1,375,000. The increase from fiscal 20 to 21 is that $2.5 million. From 21 to 22, the forecast, if you do the math, it's $6.5 million increase or 4.31% increase. And now when you look at that versus back on page 28, if you go to page 34 right now, which are coming to the end of the presentation, on page 28, we had revenues forecast for fiscal year 2022 of $158,189,361, which represents a 3.77% increase. The expenditures on page 33 are $6,572,439. We've got a challenge in fiscal year 2022 about $825,000. Thankfully, we've got proposed budgets that balance, Mr. President. Members of the council, as we mentioned before, the goal of the administration and all the town departments is to provide the highest level of services to our community while utilizing the taxpayer dollars as efficiently as possible. The submitted budget submitted on June 8th is balanced and based on sound business practices. I believe the submitted fiscal year 21 budget achieves our focuses on achieving our long-term goal of sound financial management, fiscal stability. I look forward to working with the Honorable Town Council on finalizing the fiscal year 21 budget. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, for that very comprehensive overview. So we will be doing additional discussions about this tomorrow evening, questions tomorrow evening. So at this point, I'd like to get a motion to continue this meeting to tomorrow evening at 6 PM.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can I get a roll call, please? Marilyn, I think, has joined us.
Counselor Woodland,
Yes.
Counselor Bays,
Yes.
Counselor Donato,
Yes.
Counselor Feltner,
Yes.
Counselor Gannon,
Yes.
Counselor Canellis, Counselor Palumba,
Yes.
Counselor Petrelli,
Yes.
President Sidaris.
Yes, thank you.
Councilor
We will be starting our council meeting shortly.
Council President, Council President.
Councilor Palumbo, you had a question.
Yeah, just real quickly, could you explain how we might be doing tomorrow's meeting in terms of, is this another presentation or is this an hour of questions? How do you foresee tomorrow's meeting?
We haven't really exactly finalized it, but my suggestion is going to be to develop, the manager maybe highlighting some of the differences between fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21, and then we're going to open it up for questions.
Okay.
And all the department heads will be available to be answering questions, but they're not going to be doing presentations like we've done in the past.
Thank you.
Okay.